So we're going to go over just a few housekeeping things before we jump into Christina's presentation today. I'm Hannah Curtis. I'm with the North Metro Small Business Development Center. So for anyone who's not familiar with the SBDC, we offer free one-on-one consulting with our business advisors, as well as informational and educational presentations like this. We do some online courses. So I'll put our website into the chat here in a minute so you can see all that we have to offer if there's a way we can help your business. And today's session is going to be focusing on preparing your books for tax season, obviously coming up, and it's on all of our minds. We do want to be clear, and Christina can clarify this as well, that this isn't how to do your taxes, but how to prepare for, if you do have a CPA that you work with, or if you use QuickBooks to kind of get some of those documents together. This is being recorded, so we will upload it to our video library later on this afternoon. And we'll also send out the recording as well as the materials like the PowerPoint. Christina put together some wonderful handouts. So all of that will be coming to you in an email later this afternoon as a follow-up as well. So you will have access to all of the materials. So if you feel like you're scrambling to take notes or anything, don't worry. And we also want this to be as interactive as possible. So please feel free to put any questions into the chat as we're going through, and we'll have a pause about midway through and then again at the end for Q&A. And I know I'm forgetting something. Oh, but in the meantime, when we're not in those Q&A portions, if you could try to stay on mute, that would be helpful just so we can have a smooth presentation for everyone. And I think that's it for now. So I do want to introduce you to Christina Callaway. She's owner of Flow Bookkeeping Solutions, and we're so happy that she's joined us today to give us some insights on to what we need to do to prepare for tax season. So Christina, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining this webinar. So I have a question for you. Did you stay on top of your business finances throughout 2022? In a recent survey, almost half of small business owners reported that bookkeeping was their least favorite part of running their business. So if you were not on top of your bookkeeping, not to worry. Today, we're going to discuss some steps that will get you back on track and organized and ready to hand your bookkeeping over to a tax professional. So as Hannah mentioned, I'm not a tax person, so I'm not going to be discussing anything tax specific, aside from a few topics here that align with taxes. So here's what we're going to talk about today: how to get your bookkeeping organized and reconciled for 2022, how to generate and review the main financial reports that your tax pro will need in order to file taxes, 1099s, what they are and how to file them, tips for avoiding an IRS audit, important tax deadlines for 2023, and how to stay organized and on top of your books going forward. All right, let's jump in. So the first step in getting your books in order is you want to make sure all of your transactions for 2022 are categorized. One thing I forgot to mention is all the examples I'm going to be using are QuickBooks Online, but it should apply to any bookkeeping system that you use, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet or FreshBooks or Xero. There's a lot out there. But regardless, so you want to make sure every transaction, business transaction for 2022 has been categorized. And drilling down into that, not only categorized, but you want to make sure they have a home. So what I mean by that is you're going to look at your chart of accounts. And if you have categories like uncategorized funds or miscellaneous or ask my accountant, here's a few more here that I found in QuickBooks, like uncategorized asset, uncategorized income. You see where I'm going with this. Like, those really don't tell you anything, and you need to have specific logical categories that are going to tell your accountant and the IRS what those expenses were for. It also helps you with when you want to pull reports and, see information about your business. Like, it's not going to be helpful if you have expenses in uncategorized funds. So, and then moving more into that point, you also want to check undeposited funds. Now, I believe this is only a category that exists in QuickBooks products, but what undeposited funds is so when you get payment from a customer, when you receive the payment, you immediately will put it into undeposited funds. Then, a few days later, when your bank, it hits your bank account, or say Square or Stripe, or however that money gets to your bank account, that's when it should move. You'll receive the payment and it should move from undeposited funds to the correct category. So if you have transactions still in undeposited funds from 2022, that signals that something's not right and it definitely needs to be investigated. Since we're like midway into January now, I would assume that anything that hit your bank or any payments from customers, like even at the end of December, should already be in your bank account. So that's a red flag, and something that would tell you like you need to clean up your bookkeeping a little bit. So I would investigate that. Okay, moving on. The next thing you want to check is accounts receivable. So if you invoice customers, this applies to you. What you want to do is see if there's any outstanding invoices that have not been paid. And I realize like towards the end of December, you may still have invoices that customers haven't paid yet. But what you really want to look at is anything from earlier in the year that's still sitting there. And you should be able to run reports with your bookkeeping software. Here's some reports in QuickBooks Online. You could run the accounts receivable aging detail, and that will show you any outstanding invoices. If you find that to be true, you're going to want to follow up with your clients and investigate as necessary. On the flip side, you also want to look at accounts payable. So this would be any checks that you wrote to contractors or vendors that have not been cashed yet. Do you have any bills past due? Again, checks towards the end of December may not have been cashed, but if you see things like from last June or July, you want to look into that and see what's going on. So you want to follow up with your vendors or contractors if necessary. Here are some reports you can run to see what you owe. So in your bookkeeping software, hopefully there's something similar, but like accounts payable aging detail, that would be if you pay bills through your bookkeeping software. Bills and applied payments, this report could be helpful. Those are just a few examples. Okay, now that you've gotten your AR and AP taken care of, this is the next step, and this is a really important one. So reconciling accounts. What does that mean? So every month when you get your bank statement or your credit card statement, your best practice for bookkeeping is you literally want to bring up your bank statement, bring up your bookkeeping software, and go line by line through your bank statement and make sure that that is in your bookkeeping. The reason for this is that even banks make mistakes. So transactions can be duplicated, checks aren't cashed or they don't clear, entries get incorrectly matched. One big issue that I see a lot is in QuickBooks, somebody will, instead of matching a transaction, they'll add it. So then their income gets over-reported. You don't want to pay taxes on inflated income. So this is really important to reconcile your accounts. It's also a great practice just to go line by line through your bank statement, because then you could catch, fraudulent activity, or, somebody's been charging something to your credit card. And also, sometimes the bank feed in your accounting software can get disconnected and you don't realize it. So there will be missing transactions. So again, I can't state it enough, but monthly reconciliation is such an important thing, and it will really help you keep clean books and catch errors. So what you want to do is make sure that the entire January through December has been reconciled for both all of your business bank accounts and all of your business credit cards. Okay, so once you've completed all the steps I just talked about, now you should be ready to run your financial statements. The two main financial reports that your tax professional is going to want to see is the balance sheet and your profit and loss, sometimes known as an income statement. So your balance sheet shows your business's assets and liabilities. So assets are what your company owns, and liabilities are what your company owes. For the income statement, this is going to show you the cash or the money that flows in and out of your business. So, all of your income, all of your expenses, your net income, they're both really useful reports. And once you get to know them, it's just a good idea to review them monthly, just so you can see how your business is doing, not just for tax reasons. Okay, so excuse me. So once you've generated those financial statements, you're going to review them. So here's an example of a profit and loss statement from January through December 2022. So even if this looks confusing to you, I just want to say, like, you as the business owner, you know your business best. So you're going to have a feel for, is your income inflated, or is this an accurate number for what you brought in over the course of the year? What you want to do is just kind of go, category by category through each statement, and just with your knowledge of the business, see if anything looks off. There's also a couple checks you can do. So if you've been in business for longer than a year, you could also run a profit and loss for January through December 2021 and compare from year to year. Obviously, like, hopefully you've made more money as time goes on, but you're just going to be looking for patterns. Like, if your business, makes more in certain seasons, does that season match up with the year prior? If you haven't been in business for a full year, you could run the profit and loss month by month for 2022 and just compare month by month. And as your business is in a growing phase, obviously you're going to have more expenses. And I just talked about, seasonal changes, but it just, you as the business owner should have kind of a good gut feel. And your tax pro can also help you with this. But if anything looks off, you're going to want to drill down into that category and look at the transactions that make up that total, and then reclassify if needed, or just investigate and see what's going on. The reconciliation that we did in the previous step should catch a lot of duplications or inflated income, but it's always a good idea just to run through these two before you do your taxes. Also, if you use like a third-party payment service like Stripe or Square, you could also run the same report through their software, and then compare what their totals versus what you have for income in your bookkeeping software, if that makes sense. But yeah, you don't want to be paying taxes on inflated income. So definitely, look through these before you send them off to have your taxes done. Okay, so I know that was a lot of information so far, so I just want to pause here for a minute and see if anyone has any questions so far.
There was a question that was submitted from Carrie. She's asking about accounts receivable balances from previous years that got carried over on QuickBooks Online when she switched from the desktop version to the online version. So they're not really outstanding funds. Do you have any advice about the best way to get rid of those without impacting 2022 reporting?
Right. So, is Carrie, is she on right now? I don't know if, like, I just would want to ask you if you filed taxes in previous years, uh, if you filed taxes in 2021, would
Hi,
that be?
Christina. This is Carrie. Can
Oh,
you
hi,
hear me
Carrie.
okay? I have filed taxes. The only reason there's some outstanding things is when I was using the desktop version, I wasn't really handling credit card processing fees the right way. So it was looking like people were underpaying their invoices, but they really weren't.
Okay, got it.
And so I've figured out how to do that correctly in the online version. And for 2022, everything is clean. It's just I
Okay,
need to go back and kind of get rid of these outstanding balances that are not really outstanding balances. They're just things that carried over from when I was doing my books differently on the desktop version.
okay. Yeah, I have a few tips for you. So if you'll shoot me an email, I can send you some resources on how you can get that cleaned up.
Okay.
Um, at the very end of the presentation, I'll have my email address. So just shoot me an email and this, just so you know, this is like a common thing that happens a lot. So don't feel bad. It can turn into a mess quickly, but um, it is a good idea to get that cleaned up just before you do your taxes this year. So um, yes, so I can send you some ideas.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks, Christina. I can also put that email in the chat here in just a second. Um, there is one more question, but I also want to answer a admin question that came in about recording. And as a reminder, it will be sent out this afternoon, so you will have access to the recording and all the materials. Other question for you was just about any opinion you might have about Zoho software versus QuickBooks.
Okay. I've heard of Zoho. I've never used it myself. And from what I know, it's just a lower cost alternative to QuickBooks. Um, obviously, QuickBooks is my software of choice, and it has a lot of capabilities. I don't know, depending on how complicated your business is, Zoho might be great. Um, but excuse me, the great thing about QuickBooks is like you can get the bottom line subscription for like, I think if you have an accountant discount, it's like 21 bucks a month. I don't know how that compares to Zoho, but you know, if your needs are basic, I think Zoho would be fine. But if you have higher level needs, you may want to look into QuickBooks because it really does have a lot of capabilities. So I hope that helps. Sorry, I don't know a ton about Zoho.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think that's helpful. And as a reminder, we do have consultants at the SBDC who can kind of help you walk through your specific situation if you do want to follow up with any of our financial consultants. I put that link in the chat and will also be in my follow-up email if you're wanting to dive deeper into any of this. So I think those are all of our questions for now. If you want to keep going, Christina, and then everyone else, as you do have more questions, feel free to put those in the chat and we'll have time again at the end of the presentation for more Q&A.
Sounds good. Thanks, Hannah. All right. So this next topic, I'm going to warn you, it's a little sticky. And if what I tell you just completely overwhelms you, I would say talk to your tax professional. But I do want to bring this up. And what I want to talk about is 1099 NECs. So A 1099 NEC, which is NEC is non-employee compensation. What this means is if your business made a payment of $600 or more to a vendor or contractor for services rendered in 2022, and it was via cash, check, or ACH, you may be required to file a 1099 to the IRS. And we'll get into this a little bit more because I know this can be like overwhelming and confusing. So let me give you an example, and I'm just going to skip forward to this flow chart. This will be one of the handouts that Hannah emails out, but let me give you an example. So say you hired a web designer to design a new website for your company, and you paid them $2,500 via check. What you would do is let's follow along here. Okay, so did you pay the contractor $600 or more during 2022? Yes. Did you pay them via cash, check, bank, ACH? And then I've included a couple more. This is a little bit of a gray area because the IRS has not specifically laid out which third-party processors like PayPal or Venmo this applies to. But for the sake of our example, let's say you paid with a check. So the answer is yes. Was it a legal service payment? No. Is the vendor incorporated, a nonprofit, or an S corp? Well, how would you even know that? Well, the key here is that you are supposed to actually get a W-9 form on file for any contractor that you work with. And I'll go into that a little bit more in a second. But say that you know that the web designer has an LLC, so they don't fit into any of these categories. So the answer is no. So that means you do need to prepare Form 1099 NEC. If you, just backtracking a little bit, if you hired a lawyer, say we're here, legal service payment, yes. So the answer is you will file that. It doesn't matter whether they're a corporation or not. Any type of legal service payment over $600 that was cash, check, or bank ACH, you need to file the 1099 NEC. So if you paid via like credit card or debit card, you do not need to file this. So I know that's a lot of information, so let me go back here. So any payment that was made through like PayPal business or Venmo business or through a credit card, those companies are actually going to submit a 1099-K. So that's why you don't need to worry about it. But like I was saying earlier, you do need to have a W-9 form on file for any type of your bookkeeper, web designer, lawyer, what have you. And then again, do not report payments that were made via credit card, debit card, or third-party networks. And the deadline, which is why I wanted to bring this up today, is actually in 2 weeks, so January 31st. So that means you either need to have it e-filed by then, or the 1099 needs to be delivered to the recipient by then. This is, even though this is a lot of confusing information, I just want to assure you, it's actually a really simple process. I personally use track1099.com. It takes just like a couple minutes. So all you would need is the info from the W-9 and the amount that you paid the vendor or contractor in 2022. And I think it's like $3 per e-filing. It's quick. They send it to the recipient and they also send it to the IRS. I would encourage you though, if you have any questions, please visit this link, look on the IRS website, or just talk to a CPA or an accountant. because I know this is a lot of information. So that's 1099s. And let's see, I'll just on. I might actually put, because I see a couple of questions just popped up. So maybe we should just address them right now before I move on.
Yeah, I think that'd be great because there are some that are kind of specific to this topic.
Yeah,
You can probably see those as well. So if you want
yeah.
to.
Okay, so Juliana asked for the 1099 for filer's name, should I write my personal name or the company name? So I would write the name of your LLC. And I think if you use Track 1099, it really does walk you through it very simply. I attempted to do it 1 year because you can print out the IRS forms and do it on paper and submit it. And I'm telling you, like, that was very confusing, but Track 1099, they make it really simple. So you would use your business name as the filer if that's who paid the contractor or vendor. Okay, Michelle asks, what is the IRS trying to catch or prevent with this filing requirement? So it's the 1099 NEC, it's called like I think it's called an informational filing. And so I think it's like a check and balance for the IRS just to make sure that people aren't being paid under the table or, so for example, like I, as a bookkeeper, so I have an LLC. And so my clients that pay me via check or cash, nobody pays me by cash, but like, that's an example. Technically they need to submit a 1099 NEC to me. And I usually do it for them, but I think it's just a way that I'm not pocketing the money and not reporting it. So it's just the way the IRS is keeping tabs on everyone's income. I think the thing that's going to be really tricky this year is the threshold used to be not $600, but like $20,000. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how like credit card companies and third-party payment processors like Venmo, how they handle it. I also think the part that's going to get really confusing this year is if, say, Venmo Business submits one automatically, but like I actually submitted one also for that same person. So how are they going to fix the duplications? I guess we'll just see. Let's see, Wesley asks, regarding getting a W-9 and giving a contractor a 1099, what if the company is foreign? For graphic design and website design, we use the foreign-based company Fiverr and pay Fiverr for the services. Okay, so I believe Fiverr is actually going to submit the 1099K. So I don't think you're going to have to worry about that. I know Fiverr is like similar to Upwork, and I've done work through Upwork, and they've already notified me that they're sending me a 1099K. So I think you're okay with that. I can double check though and get back to you on that.
There
Go
was a
ahead.
question similar to that, Christina, about not Fiverr specifically, but if you pay an international entity as a contractor, is there any form you need to submit to the IRS, or would you just treat it like an invoice for services?
That's a good question. I'm not 100% positive, but I believe if it's not a US based company, I think you're okay. I would double check though. I would go onto the IRS website and double check just to be sure. But I'm like 90% certain that if it's, if they're not a US based person or business, like with a social security number or an EIN, that you don't have to do it. But just double check on IRS website to be sure.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and then, okay, let's see here. I think I do see some more questions, but since they're not 1099 related, I think I'll hold those till the very end. But thank you for all the questions. And please feel free to ask more because I do really want to help you all with this because I know it's confusing. But we will have time at the end to answer more questions. So moving on, because I think that's all. Okay, so the next step I want to talk about is just getting organized and tips for avoiding an audit. So avoiding an audit. So the IRS basically just wants to know, where did the numbers come from on your tax return? So if you keep impeccable records and have receipts for all of your expenses, you should be golden. You shouldn't have to worry about being audited. Or if you are audited, you shouldn't be worried about like failing the audit. I will say though that if you do have a lot of expenses in meals and entertainment, travel, and or mileage, I would make extra certain that you have good supporting documentation for all of those categories, because I've heard from IRS auditors that those are the most often audited categories. So one tip is that if you do a lot of dining out with clients, make sure to save the receipt. And then on the back of each receipt, just write the name of the client that you were with and the business purpose of your meal or meeting. And again, you should be okay. Bottom line, and it's just common sense, but if you just make sure that you report all of your income, take only proper deductions, and then either use, a good accountant or good accounting software, and just make sure that all of your income and expenses and documents are free of errors, you should not have anything to worry about. And then that kind of piggybacks onto this. Find a filing system that works for you. So obviously the easiest, most bulletproof system is just keep all of your receipts in a file. It may be messy, but at least you're covered. You've got everything there. The IRS is going to know where the numbers came from. There's lots of digital alternatives. QuickBooks has, and again, I'm not trying to sell QuickBooks. It probably sounds like I am, but these are just some of the features that I like about their software. QuickBooks has a way that you can just like take a picture of a receipt, and then it's through their app, and then it automatically attaches it to that expense. So it's kind of a quick way to save all of your receipts digitally. But that system only works if you make it a habit and you stick to it. So the easiest thing for you might just be stuff all those receipts in a file. Excuse me. Mileage log. So if you do a lot of driving travel for your business, just make sure your mileage log has dates, miles traveled, and then the purpose of every trip. And you'll want to compile that and make sure to hand that off to your tax pro because they'll need that. Same goes for home office deductions. So if you work from a home office, you can deduct some of those expenses. And so you'll want to collect all the details related to your home office, like square footage, if you pay rent, utility bills. Again, you'll need that for tax time. Okay, looking forward. So one important thing is you'll want to prepare for estimated taxes this year, if depending on your business structure, if you need to pay estimated taxes. So you can either obviously talk to your tax professional, or here's a link here that I've used to calculate quarterly estimated tax payments. So they are estimated, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's important to know your tax obligations. If you make over a certain amount, you're required to pay estimated taxes. So this link here will tell you what that amount would be. And a really great piece of advice is If you don't already, I would recommend setting up a separate bank account for your quarterly estimated tax payments. So that way you can just automatically transfer money from your business checking to, say, like a business savings account. And it's just out of sight, out of mind, whether it's 15% or 30%, every month you just automatically put that money aside. So that way it's available when it's time to pay your estimated taxes. And then another tip I have is actually schedule time on your calendar for bookkeeping. So that way, next year at this time, you're like on top of it, you've got everything ready to go. If you put it on your calendar at the beginning of every month to take care of the previous month's bookkeeping, you just get it done, get it out of the way, and you don't have to worry. So again, I know a lot of you are here because you want to get your taxes done, but I will say that there are a lot of benefits to being proactive with your bookkeeping. And the main thing is being proactive with your bookkeeping can actually help you grow your business. Some of the other benefits are helps you budget accurately, helps you strategize your wealth, keeps your cash flow positive, gives you extra peace of mind, just helps you sleep at night. You'll always know where your business stands financially if you do this on a monthly basis. And then, like I mentioned before, it'll help you grow your business. Okay, so here's some important dates for 2023. And this, you don't need to take notes here necessarily because this will also be in a handout that Hannah sends out, but I'll just go over it quickly. So here's the estimated tax deadlines for this year. And today actually happens to be the 2022 Q4 estimated tax payment deadline. So if you were paying estimated taxes throughout 2022, today would be the deadline for Q4. April 18th is Q1 deadline. June 15th is Q2, and September 15th is Q3. I think Q4 is like, have it on the handout, but next year in January. As we talked about, January 31st is the deadline for 1099s and W-2s if you have a payroll provider. Here's an important item. If any of you are S Corps or an LLC that's taxed as a partnership, your tax deadline is actually March 15th. So just be aware of that. For the rest of us and individuals as well, tax day this year is on April 18th. So that applies to single member LLCs, sole proprietors, C Corps, and individuals. That's a good idea just to get those on your calendar. Okay, and I know that was a lot of information, so I'll stop here for more questions. Let's see here.
Yeah, there was a good one from Amanda. We get this question quite often. So she's wondering, as a contractor, what should I do with the 1099 that I receive?
Oh, okay. So when you file taxes, you'll use the information on that 1099, just like you would, if you've ever been an employee and gotten a W-2, the 1099 is basically that equivalent. So you'll use that when you do your taxes. That's a great question. And I see a couple more. So Simon asked for, if you're up for giving recommendations, any suggestions for general bookkeeping classes? I looked at Front Range Community College and ran into multiple thousands, which seemed excessive. So Hannah, I don't know if you maybe have some good, I could give you some online recommendations, but Hannah might have some as well since she's sort of associated with Front Range.
Yeah, and I did put some links to some training videos that we've done in the past that I think are helpful places to start. So understanding your finances is linked in there, and then also understanding your cash flow. Both of those have some foundational topics to give you some context. And then earlier in the chat, for those of you who are using QuickBooks, we did do a 101 and a 201 training on those before. I think that was last year that we did those. So those are really helpful. That is QuickBooks Online, but some really helpful topics that also, span even outside of QuickBooks. And again, I know often clients or businesses are nervous to meet with our business advisors if they don't have, if they feel like they don't have a certain baseline knowledge. But really, our consultants are happy to meet with you no matter where you're at in your business. They are trained to work with people who are in the very beginning, even at just idea phase, all the way through, been doing this as your full career. So we just don't want you to feel like that would need to be a barrier. And I also want to make clear that those appointments are unlimited in the sense that it's not like you just get one and then you have to pay. As long as you're continuing to work on your business, you can continue to make appointments and follow-ups with our consultants. And I also want to take this time to mention that we have consultants who are specialists in different areas. So we do have financial consultants that can kind of help you work through some of these types of questions. While we don't have a CPA on our team right now, we can refer you out to other resources if that's what you're needing. But then down the road, if you have questions that are different from financial questions, if you need help with marketing or business planning or strategy, whatever it might be, we can connect you with the advisor that would be most helpful for that situation. So kind of a long answer, but those links to those YouTube training videos might be a great place to start.
Great, thanks, Hannah. Let's see here. Sterling asks, can you recommend some local tax professionals and accountants geared towards small businesses? And I actually do have a really great recommendation. So Sterling, if you'll send me an email, I can send you her info. She specializes in small businesses and she's in Westminster. She's a really great CPA. Let's see here. And then Regine, is it true this is for labor only, not parts of items sold? Regine, if you're on, I'm wondering if this is in reference to 1099.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so yeah, so it's services only. So any if you paid a contractor or vendor for any type of service, that's what it applies to. The labor.
How does if somebody pays you for the parts or the equipment too, is there a way that you can refute that?
Can you be more specific? Like, do you have an example?
Well, like you got a 1099 and they didn't just pay you, or they didn't just put the amount of your labor on it, but they put the amount of the whole job. Like somebody replaced your bathroom and there were stuff included in with the labor, but you got a 1099 for the whole amount.
Yeah, so it's my understanding that it should only be for the service itself, not for the parts. Yeah, I would probably go back to whoever issued that 1099 and get some clarification on that. Because yeah, I don't think they should also include the parts that were involved for the job.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see here. Okay, so Eric asks, for mileage, can we lump sum one entry at the end of the month or needs to do it daily as we drive around? So Eric, I think the IRS is pretty like they want every single trip detailed on there. So like you need to have the date, the purpose of the trip, and how many miles you drove. And the more specific you are, I think the better in terms of your mileage log. So I hope that answers your question. Let's see here. Okay. Oh, there's a few more. Okay, so Susan, she recommends Scannable app. She said that it's helpful to keep track of receipts electronically. Thank you, that's awesome. And let's see here. So Mary asks, does anyone know of a QuickBooks desktop expert to ask basic questions or get basic help? I'm hoping maybe Hannah has some recommendations because all of the bookkeepers that I interface with, we all use QuickBooks Online. And I have noticed it's harder and harder to find QuickBooks desktop experts. I'm sure they're out there. Offhand, I don't have any recommendations.
I will put a link to the schedule for Carol Johnson. She's one of our SBDC consultants, and I think she mostly works with QuickBooks Online, but I know she has background in the desktop version as well. So depending on what your level of your questions are, I think she'd be able to answer those questions and at least be a good starting point. And those are free appointments you can set up with her. So I'll put that in the chat right now.
Thanks, Hannah. Peter asks, what's a great email to reach out for marketing and management? And I think this might be a Hannah question.
Yeah, so there's the link for our scheduling page right there. And you can find, I listed in the chat, either John Shields, Peter Brissett, Mike Saunders, or Diego Leas are all of our marketing specialists. So you can take a look at their schedules through that link and see who matches up best, with your own schedule.
Eric asks, what do we expect in costs to hire a bookkeeper? That's a great question, Eric. I think, it varies based on region and level of expertise. I would say in general, bookkeepers range from like $25 an hour to maybe like 50. A lot of bookkeepers just charge a flat rate. I prefer to charge a flat rate each month just because I think clients prefer to know what they're going to pay each month for bookkeeping rather than, a large surprise if a certain month took a long time. But yeah, I think that's a great question. Let's see here. Amanda says, do I need to request a 1099 from businesses that I have done work for if they do not send it? What if it was a one-time sale to a business? So you should not have to request this. This is something that the business should know to send you. It is possible to do your taxes without getting a 1099. If you feel comfortable, you may want to check in with them because it is their legal obligation to send you a 1099. But like I said, you can still do your taxes without one. What if it was a one-time sale to a business? So if you mean by sale, like you did a service for them and they paid you over $600, that still would apply. But if it was a sale of products, then that would not apply, only services. And sorry, I'm just scrolling through the questions real quick. Okay, so Carrie says she uses a free app called Everlance to track my business mileage by trip. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And Peter wanted to know, Hannah, what's the name of the QuickBooks expert again? I think you said the desktop expert. I'm thinking.
Yeah, our QuickBooks consultant, she handles more than just QuickBooks. She does other accounting questions as well. Her name is Carol Johnson. So her link is in the chat there.
Okay, sorry, I just saw your response like right as I said that. And then I do believe Hannah is going to send out a recording, or is it just going to be on the website?
Yes, everyone who registered will get a recording sent to their email along with the resources from Christina, like the PowerPoint and the handouts that I put into the chat. as well as some other helpful links. So all of that will be coming to your email, but it will also be accessible on our website in the video library under our resources tab. And just as a public service announcement, all of our recordings are always available there. So great place to go if you're wanting to see what previous topics we've covered.
Okay, great. There's a few more comments, but I don't see any more questions. So I just wanted to wrap up and say thank you all so much. Here is my contact info if any of you have any questions. If any of you are still feeling overwhelmed, even after this, which I know it was a lot of info, please feel free to reach out. I wish you all the best of luck in 2023, and I hope you have really successful years. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Christina. This has been so helpful, and we really appreciate your expertise and your time. And thank you all for joining us. We'll be following up with the resources later on, and we hope you have a great afternoon.
Great. Thanks so much.